Alright YouTube, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today guys, we are going to talk about hand traps and their usefulness with the current meta. So the new selection pack, the dreaded conspiracy, has been added into the game, and of course with that, a lot of cards has been added into the game that supports old archetypes and the new ones, making them broken or somewhat better. But anywho, that is why we are going to update our knowledge with the hand traps, whether or not they are really good with the current meta nowadays. So to start off, we have Evenly Match. So Evenly Match, I'm going to put this one as one of your main deck worthy cards. So with the current meta of Labyrinth, Trap Tricks, Branded SPS, Generators? I'm not sure about Generators. And even Tier Elements if they don't have a copy of Crime. These cards or these decks right here can easily be destroyed by the effect of Evenly Match. All you need to do is just sacrifice your battle phase for a board wipe. And with that, let's move on to Ash Blossom. So another good staple and is really good for any type of deck as well. Whether or not you are playing meta decks or not, Ash Blossom has always been a really good staple for all of the decks nowadays. Same as Imperm, and I'm gonna put Maxi as well. So these three cards, I'm not gonna include even the match, but these three staples were the first three staple cards when Master Duel was created. And I do believe that they are really strong even as of today. Then we have Gamma. So Gamma, I'm going to put this one in situational. That is because, first and foremost, you are only running 2 copies of Gamma, and not all of the decks would benefit into a Gamma summon. Also, another downside for Gamma is Driver is one card that you don't want to have in your hand during your starting duel. Also, having a Gamma and Garnet would be somewhat bad in your starting hand. And lastly, you must have no monsters on the field face up to activate the effect of Gamma. But in other situations wherein if you're using a synchro-based deck, I think Gamma is somewhat useful for this type of lineup. And then we have Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. I'm gonna put Ghost Bell as one of the situational cards. So not all cards. I think this is a really good counter for Call by the Grave, and any cards for that matter that removes cards out from the graveyard. But not all cards rely mostly in the graveyard, of course. So you'll basically have a Garnet if ever you're going up against Fluanderies or even Exosisters. Then we have Nibiru. So Nibiru at the current state, I am torn between putting this one in your main deck, but with the current meta, I think this is just a situational card. So with branded tier elements and Labyrinth doesn't really mind if you wipe their board. What's important for them is their back row. Branded, I would say they don't really go into their 5th summon by any chance. And you don't want to use Nibiru on tier elements as well. So I think I'm going to put this one in situational. Most of the decks that tend to do a lot of special summon would fold under a Nibiru effect. But not all. Even with the current meta nowadays, I think they can still play through a Nibiru. And with that, I think it's going to be like a situational card in most of the decks. So that is Nibiru. The next one we'll have is Dimension Shifter. So Shifter, I'm going to put this one on situational, of course, because not all decks would benefit onto a Shifter. So the only decks that I know by far that really benefits out of the Shifter drop are Fluanderies and Exosisters. Because basically these decks right here doesn't really rely mostly in the graveyard for their effects. So they would actually capitalize on the Shifter drop, and then most of the time, or 50% of the time, they actually win the game because their opponent can't access their graveyard for the monsters, or for any cards for that matter. Then we have DD Crow. So DD Crow, I'm not going to put this one in situational, or although DD Crow is really good, I'm going to put this one on decent. So there are a lot of good cards that can actually banish cards, especially during your turn. You can have Call by the Grave, having the ability to banish and then negate that specific card for 2 turns. I think that's much better than a DD Crow. Also, would you rather have a copy of Imperm, Ash Blossom, or Maxi rather than a copy of DD Crow on your starting hand? So I think that's non-debatable in some case. To tell you honestly, I've used DD Crow before when Tier Elements came out. It was somewhat okay. Like I said, it's better to have one of those staple cards rather than a copy of DD Crow. So I'm going to put this one on decent at best. And I think this can only target opponents' graveyards, not both graveyards. And then we have Julian Lockbird. So Julian Lock, I'm going to put this one on decent or decent at best. So a couple of problems with this card. So this is actually a double-edged hand trap, so it affects your opponent, but also you. So I think the only deck that would benefit from this is decks that doesn't rely mostly with adding cards from the deck to the hand, but getting cards out and sending it to the graveyard or putting it on the field. Like for example, Labyrinth. That's one downside for having a Julian Lock. And then we have Snow Rabbit. So this was really good when sprites just came out. Having to destroy a gigantic sprite on the board is really good. But after a while, when most of the meta decks came out, like Tier Elements as well, you don't want to destroy those cards and send it to the graveyard. I think Snow Rabbit is a good card, but not really a sought after card in most of the decks. So I'm going to put this one on decent. And then we have Artifact Lancia. It wasn't really popular even before when Runic came out. Well, it was somewhat popular, but not to an extent that it was really added in most of the decks. And even with today, where Runic is still an okay deck, as long as it's paired with another archetype like Furhide, Naturia, or Sprites. So I'm going to put this one on non-meta. And then we have Skullmeister. So Skullmeister, I'm going to put this one on... No, I'm going to put this one on non-meta. I can't say I'm going to put this one on decent. You have a ton of cards that can basically negate the effects in the graveyard. You have your Cold by the Grave for that matter. Having 2 copies of Cold by the Grave would be okay, rather than a copy of Skullmeister. And if ever you have to choose between DD Crow or Skullmeister, I think DD Crow is the best choice right there. And then we have Token Collector. Before, when Sword Soul was meta, I think it was good, but nowadays, no. Then we have Winter Cherries. So Winter Cherries, I would say non-meta. So before, when Tier Elements was its peak, where the Ishizu cards wasn't hit by the ban list, and Solik was on unlimited copies, Cherries was one of the go-to cards that you can actually use the effect and then remove a copy of their Kit Callus, and that would eventually win you most of your games. But at the current state, not really, because if ever you're gonna use Winter Cherries, you'll basically need to have a ton of monsters in the extra deck just to cater a variety of decks. And especially with the meta nowadays where Labyrinth is very popular, I don't think removing a card in the extra deck would be somewhat beneficial for you. And then we have Moonlit Chill. So this is, I would say, decent. It's better than Winter Cherries. So having to target a monster on the board, negate its effects, and if ever that target leaves the field, you'll eventually burn your opponent by that monster's attack. I think it's better than Winter Cherries. So if ever you have to choose between Winter Cherries or Moonlit Chill, I think Chill is much better rather than Winter Cherries. And then for our last card, we have Effect Veiler. So Effect Veiler, I'm going to put this one on situational. So you know what? I'm going to put this one on decent. So even though Effect Veiler is a really good card, has an imperm effect, the only downside for this is you can only use this one during your opponent's turn. And if ever you draw into this during your turn, then basically you have 1 Garnet. So it's really bad, but you're better off using imperm rather than Effect Veiler. And I think most of you will actually disagree with this, but tell me your thoughts in the comments. And that is our tier list for hand traps with the current meta. So with that, I think that's basically all our topic for today about hand traps. So I think these are all the hand traps basically that are very popular and somewhat unpopular in the current state of Master Duel. I know there are a ton of hand traps in the game that I haven't tackled with, but these are the most popular at the current state that would be somewhat good in some other ways. But anywho, that is it for today. Those are the hand trap meta. That is me signing off. Keep safe, good luck, and if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!